Follow the buzzer. Rest in peace. Woo! The best there is, the best there was, and the best ever will be. What you gonna do, brother? Hey, yo.
Can you see me now?
Strategy my Oklahoma ass.
Life sucks, and then you die.
Welcome to the JM Report. I'm your host, GoodOlJM, and this is episode 52, coming to you from CSP Studios in Tampa, Florida, the birthplace of pro wrestling. And on this Friday, March 29th, 2019, a little bit more than a week away from WrestleMania 35 from MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. Poor Jersey. I mean, I get how they can have a bad rap at times. That old... Oh, I mean, I've heard it since I was a kid growing up. Like, don't ever tell anybody that you're from New Jersey. I'm like, what is the big deal? I know people from Jersey. I mean, nothing wrong with them. Well, maybe one person, but whatever. But no, this whole WrestleMania from coming, from New York or they can't even say the New York City area for some reason, or part of the tri-state area or anything like that. They cannot, for some reason, they just avoid, they being WWE, pronouns, pal, specifically, intentionally avoiding saying New Jersey. Curious to see, I can't remember, they probably did acknowledge the last time that they were there for WrestleMania 29 at MetLife. And I was there too, by the way. It's a great atmosphere. The show itself, but obviously, since I was there, I didn't hear the commentators, thank God. But as far as I did buy the Blu-ray, and eventually joined the network. Did they say it? They had to. There's no way of avoiding that, where they were specifically coming from or broadcasting from. Obviously, MetLife Stadium. The new arena for the Giants, formerly known as the Giant Stadium. And it's always been the Meadowlands, even from me, originally from New York, the Northeast area. It's always been the Meadowlands, the area, the Meadowlands. It used to be the Meadowlands Arena, and then it was later called the Izod Center, and so on and so forth. But every time I would go to watch a WWE show, I always called it the Meadowlands Arena, despite what the ticket said or the Monarchy said. With MetLife, well, it's a whole new different building. No choice but to call it what it is. I mean, the old Giant Stadium was demolished. You can catch maybe one of its final glimpses or appearances on television if you watch the remake of the Day the Earth Stood Still with Keanu Reeves. This tidal wave of little tiny microscopic aliens just whooshed it away, but I don't want to get too far off track here. But the notion of not flat out saying, you're in Jersey, guys. Your Hall of Fame is in New York. That's Barclays Center in Brooklyn. Your Axxess, also in Brooklyn, Pier 12, I believe. And all your other events are, in the New York area. WrestleCon's in New York City itself and Midtown Manhattan. But WrestleMania itself is in New Jersey. People have to either drive or take trains underneath tunnels to get there, or fly over and parachute down, whichever your means of transportation are. But New York fans, which I'm pretty sure the majority would be in MetLife, will have to travel to another state, that being Jersey, which is right next door. It's How the guy say it, it's really literally right across the street. But I don't know. Of course, all eyes on Jersey anyway, regardless whether they acknowledge it or not. And it should be expected to be a very interesting show, to say the least, going in, especially after this week's Raw and SmackDown, where, there was feelings, there were signs that change was coming, but a lot of us, including myself, didn't think, like, well, if it's going to come, it shouldn't come, at this point. I mean, you're two at Raw and SmackDown at the time were 2 weeks off, and this coming Monday and Tuesday are your go-home shows, which, I mean, if there weren't any other previous angles that sparked your interest, or say, hey, I got to watch now to see what happens, then you failed creatively and performance-wise, and the delivery was all a failure. I'm not saying each and every single match or storyline leading into Mania is a dud, and unfortunately some of them are. But even the main one, and it was officially announced as if we didn't already know, because Ronda's been spouting her mouth about it. She tweeted about it. She went on radio and interviews and said that, the Raw Women's Championship will be the main event for WrestleMania. And that was even before it was turned into a triple threat match. Before Becky got suspended like 20 times, either for her attitude or not apologizing or having 20 broken knee injuries or whatever the hell was going on. But even back then, I said, and even then, leading up to now, I was cool and calm about it. Well, they got 2 months to kill, guys. After the Royal Rumble, they had 2 months to kill. They have to do something. Little did I know that the something will be trash. I mean, just flat out trash, because the old man apparently changed his mind halfway through the day of Monday afternoon this week, and we ended up seeing what we saw on SmackDown, which I'll get into in a minute. So, somehow, the build up to The Rock John Cena 1, which was a whole year, by the way, was a better build up than this. And the first go around for Cena and Rock was a better match than the second go around, which was a once in a lifetime, apparently twice if you didn't pass away during that time period. And the second match with them at 29, which I was there for, the second half absolutely sucked. It did. At a point, I was like, I don't care who wins now. It just got stale. It got boring. Not to mention, Rock got injured apparently during the match. Some kind of rib injury, if I remember right. Tore or pulled a muscle somewhere in his rib cage area, his abdominal. Apparently, he's not made out of steel or concrete. I mean, the man can still get hurt. But this whole Ronda Rousey, Charlotte Flair, and Becky Lynch, it should not have, for lack of a better term, blown up the way it has. And I don't mean that in a positive way. We go from Becky Lynch, who's still very popular. She still has the fans behind her, no doubt. But if you want to turn the clock back a little bit to the Royal Rumble this past January, she had a match for the SmackDown Women's title. She tapped out to Asuka. Asuka retaining the SmackDown Women's title. So what was left for Becky to do? Because after that point, she kept pushing for the fact that she will get her title shot at Mania as champion or going after the title. That she will showcase that. And all of this started even much further back than Royal Rumble. We're talking Survivor Series. Survivor Series of last year where she got injured, legit, thanks to Nia Jax, black eye, broken nose, and was pulled out of the Ronda Rousey versus Becky Lynch match because, and Becky was the champion at the time. She didn't drop the title. She just chose her replacement, who ended up being Charlotte Flair, which absolutely sucked because even the night of Becky Lynch getting injured, no one didn't see coming a great angle where the SmackDown women invaded Raw. They invaded the Raw women's roster to build momentum heading towards Survivor Series and making Ronda seem and feel vulnerable. That, okay, obviously you didn't see the attack coming, you got jumped. That's one way to look at it. But Ronda was left laying, and it wasn't often up to that point that we saw that. Very few got the upper hand on Ronda Rousey because she's the baddest woman on the planet. But Becky, the tough little Irish lady that she is, did get hurt, but she stuck it out and was able to finish up her spots, if you will. And as bloody and bruised as she looked, hey, she's still tall. As Raw went off the air that night. And it was too serious of an injury. Got pulled out. We go to Royal Rumble, where Becky was more than clear to return. Had a match with Asuka. A very good match, I got to say, from what I remember. And tapping out to the Asuka lock. So the women's Royal Rumble match itself, we see Lana hobbling away to the ring. Now, she was injured even earlier in the night during the kickoff show with her tag team match, where she managed Rusev and Shinsuke Nakamura. And I believe it was Rusev that bumped into her, being thrown through the ropes, and she twisted her ankle or her knee. And she was still expected to appear in the Rumble. Out comes Lana, limping and hobbling. And this is where we all knew that, forget about Lana being thrown to or sacrificed as lamb. But we all knew it was coming. And sure enough, in the background, we see Becky Lynch coming out of the dugout. And at first, she was not going to be allowed to head to the ring. But on the spot, apparently, through the powers of Finley, granted her the entry to the Royal Rumble match to take Lana's spot and ended up winning the darn thing. So Becky goes in one night from tapping out to one champion to win another match that she wasn't, quote unquote, scheduled to be in after replacing someone else. And by the way, Lana never got her payback on that. To go after another championship in the main event spot, nonetheless, in WrestleMania. So again, it was a lot of time to kill, and even the same night they knew what they were going to do anyway, because that's when seeds were already planted. Because Becky had already beginning to sell her knee injury, and it got worse as the weeks went on to a point where she got into crutches, but she's still getting her title shot. So she gets suspended for smacking Stephanie. She gets unsuspended for apologizing, the badass that she is, because that's what badasses do. And then Vince comes out and doubles her suspension anyway, regardless of what his son-in-law and daughter had to say about it. So she's gone all but a couple of weeks, even though she still made TV appearances. And that the next time she'll make an appearance to interfere, she'll be arrested on the spot, which she was, only to reappear the following week, apparently made bail, and selling her bogus backstage mugshots, T-shirts on the Shop Zone. All in all, Charlotte Flair was slided into the spot because Becky was suspended. And in kayfabe, if that probably stolen life support, personally, this is what I would have done to spice things up a little bit, to maybe turn the dial, if you will, on Charlotte. To have one of the authority figures, which we were promised not to get too much of, but here we are. Here they come out. Say, okay, Becky's been medically cleared. She's been unsuspended. She is still the winner of the Women's Royal Rumble, and winners are guaranteed, and I go far and say contractually obligated a title match of their choosing at WrestleMania. So Becky's momentum is regained and moving forward. Now, this could have happened maybe a week or so ago, maybe at the beginning of the month, somewhere halfway to Mania. And again, Charlotte was already the replacement. but turn to Charlotte and say, well, Charlotte, we're going with the original plan or the original idea of having Becky Lynch go one-on-one with Ronda, and not to leave you out in the cold, but you'll be allowed to face the winner for that title at a later date. Maybe at Extreme Rules, maybe at SummerSlam, who knows? And just keep it one-on-one. But shit got complicated, folks, this week. And no one knows where the hell they're going with this. I can't even I don't know them personally, but it's almost difficult to read the rumors for what they're worth. Read the inside scoops, if you will. I mean, not everyone can be spot on. Some do have their sources on the inside and say, well, this is what they say, this is what they heard, and they told me, and now I'm telling you. So it's playing telephone, basically. For those who don't know, if you line up a number of people, let's say sitting across the room in a straight line, you start off on one side, you whisper to someone's ear, mom is planning to make spaghetti and meatballs for dinner. Pass it on. If you're lucky, that same message would reach the last person and say word for word of what person number one said. But instead, mom's licking linguine with extra cheese and pepperoni. Well, where that come from, I don't know. Someone's really hungry. But for the most part, that's what these reporters do. They play telephone. And I'm not trying to discredit them anyway, because there have been plenty of times, more than half, I would say, that they had the report right. And when questioned, either at Q&A or on a podcast, either said producer or said agent or said promoter, they'll deny it for some reason. But then you have your same talent involved in questioned scenario. They'll go on an interview and say, no, that's exactly how it was set up. The best example was for WrestleMania 30. After CM Punk left, the original idea was to have Sheamus take on Daniel Bryan one-on-one for reasons. And then basically, not so much by popular demand, but more like forcing the hand. And after Punk left, where he was rumored to have a match with Triple H at WrestleMania 30, the momentum and the fandemonium, if you will, for Daniel Bryan was just overwhelming, and it could not be ignored. They tried everything to keep Daniel Bryan away from the main event of Mania that year. But then Batista came back and kind of threw like a monkey wrench in everything, and nothing that Dave did. It was just the fans resented him because, no, you're not our guy right now, Batista. It's Daniel Bryan. And it wasn't said at the time. It wasn't maybe a week or so later, but none of us didn't know that Batista was back full time and still going to do his acting career on the side. He was back for about a 4-year deal. But all that came crumbling down, and that's a whole other story. So we ended up getting the triple threat match. Batista wins the Rumble to, of course, the boos, and he moves on to face Randy Orton to go one-on-one for the world title, the unified world title. And people hated it. So Bryan goes on WWE's own social media channels, and I believe even on one of his biopic videos, said that, yeah, that was the original idea of Bryan taking on Sheamus, and that it was going to be Batista and Randy Orton. But guys like Triple H and Vince, even Stephanie was like, no, that was our original plan. We wanted to make the fans happy. Like, yeah, no kidding. You were forced to make those changes. Had Punk not walked out, had Batista not received the reaction that he did, what choice would there have been? The one-on-one match between Orton and Batista, had that stood, it would have just stanked up the joint. I mean, forget about the Hammerstein Ballroom where it was Batista, ironically, against Big Show, and how much they were booed out of the building. That small little arena, if you will, that ballroom. I mean, the emotion that came through the TV screen, and I remember watching that. It was overwhelming. Now, imagine the same amount of passion to put something on that we don't want to see. Orton versus Batista for the world title, the main event at a WrestleMania. in the Superdome. Just imagine that course of brews. They did everything but throw. They would have done everything but throw tomatoes in the ring, if that was possible, or they can get away with. Thankfully, the ringside chairs were connected with each other. They were, I think they were not bolted, but they were hooked in with each other, and you had to unlock them to take them home with you because that was part of the ticket. Thankfully, no one figured that out and unhinged those chairs and started throwing those in the ring. Oh, no, that would have been disastrous. Do not do that. Don't do that ever. This is not ECW. So where am I going with all this? Because I know I'm going way long in my intro here. Let's just cut through Raw and SmackDown, and then I'll chime in on where I think they really screwed the pooch here. But I'm sure there's something in mind, and only because of that reason, our fans, including myself, are going to tune in to see where you're going with this. It's either going to make things worse or say like, okay, I see what you're trying to do. I see what you want to do. But there was something that said along the way, whether it's true or not, but it would not surprise me if it is, that just really left a thorn on my side ever since it came out. But Raw began with Ronda Rousey, and it was announced early in the day that there was going to be a Beat the Clock challenge involving all three women in the WrestleMania main event, as they will take on members of the Riot Squad. Now, usually when there is a Beat the Clock challenge, there's something at stake here, where either you get a title shot, the winner of the best time gets a title match, gets a rematch, or something's at stake. Here, there was absolutely nothing at stake other than maybe bragging rights. So even around the point that I don't know, I didn't even know what the hell a Beat the Clock challenge is. And I'm like, okay, this is coming from a longtime fan. Scripted or not, that was really dumb for her to say. So after a few mic drops, only to pick it up again, which is kind of beating the purpose of a mic drop there, Rhonda. And either this was intentional or not, her smiling each time, it's like, oh wait, I got something else to say. No, you killed the mood there. You're done. Just don't drop the microphone anymore, which you did anyway. So out comes Becky Lynch, out comes Charlotte Flair, out come all three members of the Riot Squad. Everyone stood around ringside watching the first match, which was Ronda Rousey going one-on-one with Sarah Logan as the first match gets underway. And what started off as a cat and mouse game intentionally by Logan's part to fill up as much time, because in the first match of the Beat the Clock sets the mood, if you will. It sets up, okay, you're the first match in the Beat the Clock. You got to beat your opponent in the fastest time possible. And every other match afterwards, the clock counts down to see if that other opponent or challenger can beat your time. And if they do, then there will be the new time to beat, and so on and so forth. So again, after a cat and mouse game, Ronda finally catches to Sarah Logan, beats it down a little bit, and makes a tap out at 1 minute and 25 seconds even. We immediately get into Charlotte Flair taking on Ruby Riott. However, Charlotte was not able to beat the time as it expired, even after having Ruby Riott in the figure eight. As Ruby hung in there, didn't bury Ruby Riott here, thankfully. I know it's not really what was intended here, but I know a lot of people will go that, like, oh, they would have buried her. Like, no. Logan wasn't really buried. I mean, they're not really doing anything with the Riot Squad, as far as I could tell, could do a lot more with, but at least they're getting TV time. That's the only positive thing that I can come out with this thing, where you see members of the Riot Squad or anyone else in their position and just look like they're being thrown as sacrificial lamb. But at least it's done on live TV, and they're getting that exposure. And I get the frustration. I get the anger that they could do so much better by maybe winning a few matches here and there, maybe have a crack at either the women's title or now the women's tag titles. But things are so complicated right now. Then again, leading to WrestleMania season is always complicated. So Charlotte is eliminated basically from the Beat the Clock Challenge. So now it's down to Becky Lynch and Liv Morgan. And Becky was able to defeat Morgan with 7 seconds to spare on the clock with a pinfall. So this entire time, Ronda was on stage watching all this. And this, by the way, took up the first segment of Raw. And Ronda was upset. And basically, yeah, it was just bragging rights and building a little momentum heading towards a triple threat match. But it's a whole different concept. You're going from a Beat the Clock challenge to a triple threat match. What time are you, whose time are you trying to beat by winning the title from Ronda? So this storyline will get more complicated the following night, which I'll get into. So on with the show. We were scheduled for a handicap match 2 against 1 with Lio Rush and Bobby Lashley taking on Finn Balor, where had Finn Balor win, he would get a shot of the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania versus Bobby Lashley. So Balor gets into the ring, and Lio Rush cuts a promo saying that he's not medically cleared to compete alongside Lashley as he was beaten up by Braun Strowman the week prior. So his replacement was former WWE champion Jinder Mahal coming down with the Singh brothers. So essentially this became a 5-on-1 handicap match. Legally it was Lashley and Mahal, but of course you got Lio Rush and the Singh brothers on the outside. They all play their part to interfere or cause battle the match. But against all odds, Finn Balor was able to hit the coup de grace on Jinder Mahal to pin and win and receive an Intercontinental Championship match versus Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania. Lashley, of course, was not happy about this as he took out his frustrations on everyone in the ring, including Jinder Mahal with a spear and a few high spot spine busters for the Singh brothers. And we move on to Elias, who was in Times Square on a rainy night, singing in the rain, so to speak, and runs into merchants and vendors along the area as he was prepping up to be the musical number for WrestleMania. There was one of these musicians out there who outshined Elias, it seemed like, for a moment with a guitar and started singing, but Elias shut him down quickly, thinking he wasn't that good enough. Fresh off his honeymoon, Aleister Black returns to Raw, teaming up with Ricochet, taking on the Raw Tag Team Champions, The Revival, in a non-title match, but more of a grudge match from a couple of weeks ago after The Revival jumped Ricochet and Aleister on stage. And The Revival, unfortunately, continued their losing streak in this non-title match again after Aleister hits a double black mass as both members of the Revival go down. But Wilder was left in the ring, and this allowed Ricochet to hit his 630 maneuver for the pin and win. And I think to make it it's almost a joke at this point that every time moving forward that Revival lose in a non-title match, that they will go to the ring announcer and make him acknowledge that. But however, still your Raw Tag Team Champions, the Revival, so they kind of get the last laugh there because they're still champions. Drew McIntyre makes his way to the ring as he is waiting for Roman Reigns' response for McIntyre's fight at WrestleMania. And sure enough, Roman Reigns makes his return walking down the aisle and goes face to face. And it still amazes me how tall, how big McIntyre really is. I think he's built at 6'7", legit, maybe 6'8". And just by a few inches, he's dwarfing over Roman Reigns. And Roman Reigns is no small man either. So he points out, he says, Roman accepts your challenge. And basically, as Joe, you don't ever talk about my family again, which McIntyre did mention in his promo about think about your family, your children, your wife. You're going to put them through something like this again, meaning the beating that he's going to receive at Mania after what he went through with his leukemia battle. So Roman accepts the challenge, but Joe beats the crap out of McIntyre. But unfortunately, McIntyre would regain momentum by delivering a low blow and leaving Reigns in the ring. So it's official. Drew McIntyre one-on-one with Roman Reigns at Mania. Backstage, we see McIntyre again, and he runs into Dean Ambrose, as Ambrose repeated a comment from McIntyre's promo about being exterminated as a cockroach, but Ambrose is still standing in front of him. So Ambrose will want to give him an opportunity to prove it again in a last man standing match later that night, and McIntyre accepted. Natalya went one-on-one with Sasha Banks as Bayley and Beth Phoenix were ringside. And that's why every time I see Sasha Banks wearing that checkered attire, that tic-tac-toe attire, or the chessboard attire, I think she's paying homage to Sparky Plug, but that's just me. Wasn't much to the match, as once again Tamina and Nia came through the crowd, jumping Bayley. And as they tried to attack Beth Phoenix, she was prepared this time by delivering a glam slam on Tamina, and nearly had Nia Jax set up for a huge spot, either a Samoan drop or a slam, but Beth Phoenix was able to get Nia off her feet here for a moment. However, Tamina interfered there. And it was expected. It was everything but confirmed by WWE by the end of this night that we will get a fatal four-way tag team match for the women's tag team titles, as Sasha Banks and Bayley defend against Tamina and Nia Jax, Beth Phoenix and Natalya, and the Iconics at WrestleMania. And right after this match, we, as Natalya was in the ring, because she showed her emotions about this, it was finally announced after weeks of speculations and rumors that the Hart Foundation tag team will be inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. Bret Hart and Jim Neidhart. People were still asking if this will include Jimmy Hart, because the original thought was the Hart Foundation will go in as the tag team and manager, because all men have last name Hart, and that Bret and Jimmy would have been two-time Hall of Famers. But the way it was built here, it was only Bret and Neidhart going in as a tag team. Maybe Jimmy can still have a chance to induct them, but for right now, it stands as the original tag team and not the Hart Foundation faction, which I'm sure a lot of us would love to see one day, including the British Bulldog, Owen Hart, and Brian Pillman. I'm sure Pillman will go in eventually. Bulldog has to go in. He's long overdue. And, of course, Owen Hart. But we all know the story. And for those who don't know, who haven't heard yet, I encourage you all to listen to the Georgia Smith interview that I conducted late last year. And she discusses openly about her thoughts about that and what may or may not be preventing us, the fans, from seeing Owen Hart being inducted into the Hall of Fame. We see Kurt Angle making his way to the ring backstage as he is being interviewed, but only to be interrupted by Baron Corbin, his current opponent for WrestleMania for his final match in the WWE. Corbin pointed out that Angle is being pitied by the fans, and to no other uncertainties, Angle basically says, "Screw you," because it's a family show. And this will be Kurt Angle's final match in Boston, Massachusetts, at least on television and for Raw and WWE. Well, I'll get into that later. So we don't get Braun Strowman invading SNL as he mentioned a few weeks ago. Instead, Michael Che and Colin Jost were invited to Raw, as all three men will be a special guest on A Moment with Bliss, hosted by Alexa Bliss. And we come back from the commercial break and see that Sasha Banks and Bayley basically just confirmed, again, what we already knew with the Fatal 4-Way. So that's no need to be repeating that. So back to the Moment of Bliss. Instead, we are linked up with a satellite with Che and Jost from the SNL set in New York. And Braun Strowman is in the ring sitting with Alexa Bliss, because normally this thing is set up on stage, but now this time it's in the ring, I guess, to get the better view on screen, to have a back and forth conversation. So, not everyone got the jokes, but I think there was more into seeing how much of a heel Colin Jost can be, as he mentions that he made a mistake wearing a New York Mets baseball cap the last time he saw Strowman when he was choked out, and he will correct it right now by wearing a New York Mets, by wearing a New York Yankees hat instead, while they were in Boston. Well, not physically anyway. Of course, this got a loud boo reaction from the Boston crowd. And Joust pointed out how upset he was that Braun Strowman destroyed the sports car that was given to him as a gift. But now it's a play set, so everyone can relive that moment. And just crack jokes about how Strowman was seeking therapy or should seek therapy for that, and that he's only 5'11" and 180 pounds, and he wanted Strowman to pay back for the car plus interest and an autograph from Brock Lesnar. So clearly he was just being joke. I mean, I got the jokes. I do watch Weekend Update whenever there's a new episode, and they kill it. They kill it. But unfortunately, what I believe, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But what I believe, just that form of comedy doesn't always fly with the WWE audience. I mean, no one said that you can't be a WWE and an SNL fan at the same time. I mean, that's just ridiculous. But to mix and match the comedy and the assuming that everybody will get it, you lost them. Once you put the Yankee hat on in a Boston crowd or for a Boston crowd, you lost them. So if you're expecting any kind of laughter besides from the commentators that were trying really hard to not break out laughter, I mean, you guys have a mute button. Use it once in a while, especially Cole. But anyway, the jokes didn't fly really well, and other than getting again the baseball cap on and wanting an autograph from Brock Lesnar, that would be the only way to make things right between Colin Jost and Braun Strowman. So Strowman had a different suggestion and said, well, how about you guys join the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal? And for some reason, Michael Che accepted on both of their behalves. So now, as it stands right now, only 3 members of the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal participants are Braun Strowman and Saturday Night Live's Michael Che and Colin Jost. And no, I'm not trying to make a joke there. That's what's advertised. They showed a graph of it. Andre the Giant statue trophy right in the middle, Strowman on the right, Che and Jost on the other. And apparently it's happening. We go back to Elias standing right outside of Madison Square Garden. All of a sudden, someone off camera drops him a quarter in a cup that he was holding, thinking that he was a peddler. And this gave Elias an idea. Oh, hey, maybe I should try something. And we'll check on him later. Baron Corbin makes his way to the ring to go one-on-one with Apollo Crews, as Corbin gets the win after hitting the End of Days. But after the match, he would attack Crews again with another End of Days. And I love how the ring announcer, of all the times to really kind of like get a cheap pop for anyone, not even including himself, but Boston's own Baron Corbin. We know how vocal and emotional the Boston crowd can get, very similar to pretty much anyone in the Northeast area, the tri-state area especially. They can be very vocal, very loud, very passionate. So we go from having a beat the clock challenge, which made absolutely no sense, to a 6-woman tag team match that was announced for this coming week on Raw, as Becky, Ronda, and Charlotte will team up for the Go Home show to take on all members of the Riot Squad. Again, considering what happened the rest of the week, this better make freaking sense. And for all we know, they'll probably change this because of the circumstance that came the next night. But right around, it still stands, so we'll see. Seth Rollins comes out to cut a promo on Brock Lesnar and their match at WrestleMania. Blah, blah, blah. I'm going to slay the beast. Blah, blah, blah. I'm going to burn down Suplex City. Blah, blah, blah. Paul Heyman interrupts again, saying that this is not a handicap match as Lesnar takes on Rollins and the entire WWE fan base. And not to take it personal when Rollins and the entire fan base lose at Mania, when this prompts Rollins to run up the rampway as Heyman was leaving, catches up to him. Heyman falls to the ground thinking that he was about to get pummeled. But Rollins was just trying to say before he got interrupted that the march into Suplex City and to burn it down. very similar to the Ronda, Becky, and Charlotte situation. They had 2 months to kill with Brock Lesnar, but at least Ronda, Becky, and Charlotte showed up on occasions, but whatever. This literally segues into Kurt Angle's entrance as Heyman was still on the ground, while the fans chanted, "You suck," along with the theme song, but Angle will point towards Heyman in reference to that it's Heyman who sucks. Angle goes one-on-one with United States champion Samoa Joe. And there was one spot where Joe was going for a snap suplex, but Angle, for some reason, took it as a DDT and landed on the top of his head. I mean, that was just the best way to describe it. And whether it was a botch or not, or whatever happened, it was still uploaded to WWE social media channels. And it starts right at that spot. And announcers, from what I remember, didn't acknowledge it. The referee did check on Angle. Angle looked but dazed, but continued the match regardless. And Angle will get a surprise victory over Samoa Joe, as Joe went for his coquina clutch, but Angle was able to counter and roll him up for the 3 count. Triple H makes his way to the ring to congratulate the entire women's roster, including the main event for WrestleMania. And he's received a letter from Batista's attorney asking for yet another stipulation to their match, which was already no holds barred at WrestleMania, to have Triple H's career on the line. This after Triple H mocks, which if he didn't know at the day, he definitely knew at the end of the day, with all the memes and the GIFs and the edited videos where Batista's yelling, "Give me what I want," over and over again. And in 2019, Triple H makes a Spice Girls reference to a song that I believe was, 2000, 2001 when it first came out, nearly 20 years ago. If the Spice Girls weren't still in pop culture, the WWE just put them right back in, and they should get a spot at a WrestleMania or at least at an upcoming pay-per-view to sing the national anthem, which would be pretty strange coming from a United Kingdom pop group, but it is what it is. So Triple H mocked the letter saying about the attorney or what Batista was demanding, to give me what I want, what I really, really want. I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. Good times. But Triple H agrees. And it was mentioned once about this being Batista's last match as well. That hasn't really surfaced again. So essentially we have a career versus career ending match here in a no holds barred scenario. How and why Batista's career not mentioned again wasn't brought up ever, who knows? But yeah, I'll leave it at that. Who knows? Once again, we check in with Elias, and he is now standing underneath an overhead construction railing, which is all over New York City at all times. Standing there, playing guitar, and at his feet is the open guitar case, where he has had a few dollars already accumulated. And as Elias is speaking towards the camera, still playing guitar a little bit, we see one man drop a bill. Couldn't tell how much it was, but could have been a dollar bill. And then we see a second man off camera walk up and snatch in and takes away. He steals a few bills from the guitar case. Elias sees this, but doesn't run after him and says, "Oh well, that won't be nearly as much money as I'll be making at WrestleMania," because he plans to make a lot more. So this is where Elias makes the mistakes and starts walking away from the guitar case, still playing for the camera. And the same thief returns, only this time to steal the entire guitar case and run off. And Elias did not see any of this. So what they should have done is for another segment, which I don't think they went back to for Elias, is asking people for money, legit, like for a loan to get back to Stanford or to go to the next town that WWE was going to be in, because he lost all of his money because of a thief. Or at the very least, reported to a police station nearby. But it was raining. They probably wouldn't have done any of that, or they were running out of time anyway, because this was towards the end of the segment for Monday Night Raw. And it's time for the main event as we get Dean Ambrose and Drew McIntyre in the last man standing match. McIntyre completely dominated Ambrose. Here, he gets a lot of spots in. McIntyre does, using chairs, candlesticks, steel steps, even a table. Set up in the corner at one point as Ambrose falls to McIntyre after receiving a Claymore kick, and the referee counted to 10. No Roman Reigns for a save or a run-in. McIntyre, even after McIntyre delivered a second Claymore kick, as Raw went off the air, making McIntyre look as strong as ever, heading towards WrestleMania next Sunday night versus Roman Reigns. So that's your Raw review. SmackDown was interesting, to say the least, as we were expecting a fatal four-way match for the SmackDown Women's Championship that was completely scrapped. Never happened, never meant, let alone explain why it was. So Meltzer chimed in the next day. Well, I believe he reported it late Tuesday night, but it was mentioned early Wednesday morning as far as what happened after the opening segment of SmackDown. But let's go with it bit by bit. The New Day opened up SmackDown, and they were talking as if they were about to live up to the promise and quit WWE, as they mentioned in their social media videos since the week before about Kofi Kingston's treatment and how they're not getting opportunities as they should, but not complaining and this and that, which is true, by the way. But won't make such a decision until they get answers from Vince. And sure enough, you ask and you shall receive. Vince makes his way to the ring. And before Vince could even say a word, he gets interrupted by Daniel Bryan with Rowan. And Bryan doesn't mind if the New Day quit at all, because they are a novelty act and they are a bunch of B-plus players. And it was something that Vince created just for comedy shticks. But Vince will not allow them to quit the New Day, as Vince points out that Kofi is done with opportunities. No more chances for Kofi Kingston. However, in a ridiculous / redundant maneuver, he gives Kofi Kingston an opportunity, but not for Kofi himself, rather his tag team partners. They're put in a position to give Kofi Kingston an opportunity. So McMahon sets up yet another gauntlet match, this time in tag team form, as Big E and Xavier Woods were to take on tag teams of SmackDown. And if they were to win the gauntlet match, then and only then will Kofi Kingston receive a title shot at WrestleMania versus Daniel Bryan. This will come later in the night, and Kofi Kingston was barred from ringside. And we will get into that match later on. So here's where the poop hits the fan. And it might have gone into some people's eyes, because then they couldn't believe the shit that they saw. Becky Lynch is backstage during an interview and is asking what exactly did Charlotte Flair do to deserve a championship match at WrestleMania, only to be interrupted in the arena by Flair herself, who makes her way to the ring. And no one knew at first what was happening. Even the commentators pointed out, like, wait, what's going on? After Asuka made her way to the ring, and the ring announcer announced that this is for the SmackDown Women's Championship. And everyone was thrown for a loop. They had no idea. So the match gets underway. It makes you wonder where the hell she's been all this time too, Asuka. Now here's someone else who has been seen very little, if ever. Maybe a handful of appearances, maybe less than that, since making the man, the number one contender for another championship, tap out at the Royal Rumble for her title. Asuka, who at one point was undefeated in NXT into the WWE for 2 years. only to suffer her first loss at last year's WrestleMania, ironically against Charlotte Flair, to retain the SmackDown Women's title at that time. Here we are with the roles reversed a little bit. But what momentum, and yeah, who's ready for Asuka? No one's ready for Asuka. I get that, but it would have been nice and more believable at an Asuka show. Well, no one's ready for you because you're never on TV. How can someone be ready for you if you're never around? At least, again, in front of the cameras. I blame you, creative. Trying to keep Vince McMahon happy, but I think I should just share what Dave Meltzer said. And he has some information regarding of how Vince McMahon made the choice of putting the SmackDown title back on Charlotte Flair as the main event rolls nearer for WrestleMania. And apparently McMahon changed his mind on sometime Monday afternoon. So the day before SmackDown, according to Meltzer, McMahon changed his mind the day before about leaving the title on Asuka. So in other words, McMahon Monday morning was like, yeah, I'll keep the belt on Asuka. She'll be all right. A few hours later, you know what? Take the belt off Asuka. On second thought. According to Meltzer, Vince didn't feel it was worth having a 17th or 18th match on the card so Asuka would have an opponent that no one would care about. So instead incorporated the SmackDown Women's title into the main event with the Raw Women's title. You draw your own conclusions on that one, folks, because other than the old man just, besides changing his mind constantly, and again, the notion, the concept, his frame of mind, his mentality, and every time he says, or he's being quoted by saying, Vince says, no one cares. No one wants to see that. Who are you speaking for other than yourself? There has to be at least one person, either they've been fired or buried next to Jimmy Hoffa, that have to been spoken out and say, well, Vince, this hasn't been done in a while. Fans are craving on this because I see this through social media. Fans are complaining about this and that. And for someone who says, we listen to the audience, you are now the authority, bullshit, kiss my ass. You've done anything but that. Since making that announcement in character last December, and nothing's changed. Nothing will change as expected. So I'm sticking to my guns that as long as Vince is in control and everybody's pissing their pants, not to piss him off, to have logical storylines, reasonable storylines to make Vince happy, but not the audience. You should not have those jobs, people. You should not be in that position, let alone be called creative or on the creative team or be called a writer. If that's the case, to go back to writing for maybe Dr. Seuss and Sesame Street, where clearly those are the audiences you're going for, a much younger audience that the base that you're solely shooting for now. I was once part of that audience. And whatever I didn't question back then, I'm doing it now, from Montreal Screwjob, of what really happened with the Ultimate Warrior, those countless times he's left the company, the more behind-the-scenes stuff with maybe Macho Man and the stories behind Hall and Nash leaving, the Bret Hart story after '96, Shawn Michaels losing his smile, and on and on and on. Some of it's coming out, but after a while, you still got to question even those answers. But why? Okay, you're telling me something, but not the entire story. And even Bruce Pritchard on his podcast, who's been there, yes, he saw what he saw, he heard what he did, fine. But you got to believe that even from his point of view, he's still not giving the entire story. Not that he's lied. I'm not saying he's lying, but you don't give the entire story. Like, once upon a time, a man found a bag of money. The end. Well, what did he do with the money? Did he spend it on this? Did he invest? What did he do? Well, other than being happy for the rest of his life, or for as long as that money lasted. It just brings my blood to a boil. And they still continue claiming to be an entertainment company where we make movies and blah, blah, blah. So I guess there wasn't any pressure when Fox put out for, I mean, a lot of people will get this reference. When X-Men Origins Wolverine came out, damn near everyone shitted all over that movie. Nowhere near what it was supposed to be, and ruined another character in the process. Years later, still having that bad taste in their mouth, they made up for it. To an extent, they made up for it. They gave us Logan. And then 2 Deadpool movies. Those Deadpool movies, thanks to Ryan Reynolds in large part. And I'm not even going to get into the merger with Disney and 21st Century Fox. That's a whole different story. I hope we see it. I really do. The Fox characters from Marvel interact with the Disney Marvel characters as far as the MCU goes. But that's neither here or there. Point is that they've heard, they being Fox, and seen all the backlash, all the dirty, rotten comments that were made. And they knew they screwed up after the fact, but they knew they screwed up. It took time, but they made up for it. In so many ways, I mean, some of us took it as an apology. We apologize for Wolverine Origins. Here's Logan. Here's Deadpool Parts 1 and 2. I don't see Vince or anyone in the WWE doing that anytime soon, or at least not own up to where they make a mistake, where their excuses, instead of saying, we apologize for that mistake. No, it was for the sake of entertainment. Who the hell are you entertaining besides yourselves? Or just one man because apparently he's the only one that signs your paychecks. Sure, let it be that, this is how the wrestling business has always been, even before my time. Okay, granted. But that could have changed just as time always changes. Get with the times. Times change. And they're like, no, it does. Well, in that little world of the WWE, ironically, that Bruce Pritchard returned to, nothing has changed. Not even a tiny little bit. As far as presentation and delivery of what we end up getting on television every week. You can change the background all you want. You can highlight and LED the rings and the staging and the rampway all you want. It's still over-scripted. People don't sell when they need to. Things don't segue from one week to another. Like one week, Becky's on crutches and the next she's not. I mean, not even with the slightest little limp. But she's getting better, right? She's been medically cleared, right? And I'm probably going against my own words from last week or the week before, but having a second look at it, okay, she's off crutches finally, but can she just have a slight little limp? Or make it look like she tweaked it when she was getting in or out of the ring for a promo or after an interview? It may still be a prime focus during a match at Mania where Becky Lynch's knee gets attacked either by Ronda and or Charlotte. The bottom line is, for me, it just, it puts me over the edge where it's constantly repeated by more than one person about where Vince McMahon says they don't care about that. They don't want to see that. Which makes me wonder, well, how do you know that? Did you hear that? Because if you do listen to the audience, then you'll be hearing everything else we've been saying about what we do want and what we do not want. For a long period of time, I'll say nearly 5 years, we were saying for a very long time that the fans did not want, at least a large portion of the fans, did not want to see Roman Reigns on top, let alone as champion. But because of a real life situation, a serious situation that involved his health and his well-being, yeah, I'll admit, I can't speak for everyone else, but I'll admit, yeah, my thoughts and feelings about Roman Reigns completely changed. I don't want to see anyone either Roman Reigns or anyone come out and say that they're sick or then they've been re-diagnosed with a cancer and have to leave for treatment, and not knowing how serious it is, not knowing how long it will take, not knowing what the results will be. It's a human being we're talking about. And I had the privilege to meet and work with some of his relatives out here in the Tampa Bay and Mineola area. And they're great people. I couldn't imagine what they were going through. But that's real life. That's something you don't script. That's something you don't say that no one's going to care about. Here, on the other hand, you're just insulting people's intelligence. And I'm sure at this point someone's asking, well, JM, why do you keep on watching? Well, you know what? I grew up with this. It's something I love to talk about. Matter of fact, I spoke to a complete stranger, one of the cashiers at a Walmart, who saw me wearing a Performance Center shirt, which I just came from the gym, thought that I was going or attending or training at the Performance Center. And disappointingly, I said, no, I just bought the shirt. It's what I work out in. Unbeknownst to me, while he's ringing me up, we started getting into what ended up being a 10, 15-minute conversation with the current state of the WWE and how fortunate he's been working at the store. How many talent has walked in. And up to this point, he's seen them so often that he calls them by a first-name basis, which is incredible. He's a little bit younger than me, but he even realizes that when he first started, how different things have been. And he agreed that he's sick to the core about, like, no, that's unfair. And I know a lot of people in the circle don't want to hear about, well, life isn't fair. When you're in control of a situation like this, where you script it and you say who is who, you say who's the bad guy, who say who's the good guy, who say who's going to win or going to lose, then yeah, it is unfair because you have control over it. Life, unless you have control over your own life, as far as your income and your household and your family and all points in between, life can be unfair. You don't know if you're going to get hit by a car, God forbid anyone does, or into a physical altercation, or you come home and you've been broken into. That's life being unfair because you have no control over it. It's not fair. And it's something common to say. Who the hell are you to say, well, life isn't fair? Why should we be? Why should we make it appear that way? You keep saying it over and over again, and one of your initials in your damn company is entertainment, so entertain us. Part of it, yeah, is upsetting the fans and making you tune in to see what's going to happen next. Are the good guys going to triumph? Are the bad guys going to fall? We get that. Some good examples are The Walking Dead, where the good guys fall, hell, even go as far as killing off some characters, like this past weekend was. The Quiet Beginning, I think it was called. And we are expecting the bad guys to get their comeuppance. That happens on occasion in WWE, but when it just comes out of nowhere and you sacrifice one of your talents that had absolutely nothing to do with that decision, I mean, that's just how she was booked. And I'm talking about Asuka. Poor thing was just like, okay, we got nothing for you. Just give us the belt, and maybe after Mania, maybe after the draft, we got something for you. Maybe. And you wonder why other talents are leaving or requesting their release or letting their contracts expire and this and that. But yet you're signing off new talent left and right almost every week. And they may or may not know the case going in, the situation going in, but hell, who cares? I'm signing up with WWE. I got a contract with WWE and I'm getting paid, living off my childhood dream in most cases. I may never have that opportunity. Hell, after these comments, I doubt I ever will. Never say never in this business, right? But poor Asuka, she deserved a lot better, whether it was kayfabe or shoot or whatever. But a lot of talent jumped to social media immediately after Smackdown, or after the match, matter of fact, where Asuka tapped out It was a copy and paste repeat of WrestleMania last year, where Charlotte Flair regained the SmackDown Women's title by making Asuka tap out. And now at the triple threat match at WrestleMania, we have Becky Lynch versus Raw Women's Champion Ronda Rousey versus SmackDown Women's Champion Charlotte Flair. So unless they're going to scrap the 6-woman tag team match this week and put Ronda in an impromptu title match or something, what really is at stake? I mean, are they trying to go for, we're making the SmackDown Women's title the main event, not the Raw title? Who knows what really is going on? Only Vince in his cryptic Rubik's Cube, trapped in a maze, wrapped inside of an enigma brain, does he know what's going on or what he's going to do next. So this makes Charlotte Flair an 8-time women's champion. Halfway there, daddy. Woo! If the idea is for Charlotte to not be... the idea was to not have Charlotte be shadowed by Ronda or Becky. At least that's another way I took it. But again, Asuka, I mean, she's a trooper. She did what she was told, and it is what it is. And as the fans, we just gotta accept it. As Charlotte leaves the ring celebrating, we get Kurt Angle coming down to the ring to go one-on-one on his final SmackDown match versus AJ Styles. And both men try to end the match early, or in Kurt Angle's case, going for an angle slam and an ankle lock, only for Styles to counter. Same thing with Angle. He countered a Styles clash and a calf crusher, kind of doing a feeling out process here, as it's been a while since we've seen these two in a match together since the Impact days. But this match will be short-lived, as Randy Orton will hit the ring and deliver an RKO to Styles, causing a DQ. And Angle, being upset, delivered an angle slam to Randy Orton, as both baby faces celebrated in the ring, and Angle acknowledged the crowd, as once again this was being SmackDown, or Kurt Angle's last SmackDown match. But peculiar of how short this match was to begin with, don't know if anything, it was never reported, never mentioned anywhere about Angle landing on his head the night before in the match with Samoa Joe. So maybe, precaution, maybe that, hey, Angle, maybe you want to save your best stuff and be as injury-free as possible leading into next Sunday against Baron Corbin. We get The Miz to cut a promo and challenge Shane to a Falls Count Anywhere match at Mania. This brings out Shane, but not before local security basically occupy the rampway, kind of creating a barrier between Shane and Miz. And also Primo, where the hell has he been? Shelton Benjamin and Sanity as part of they weren't dressed, but they were part of the security guard wall protecting area there. So Shane accepts the match and then makes a real personal comment about how he placed his hands on the Miz's father, George, back at Fastlane, and that he wished he had been there before his father impregnated his son when he was conceived. This, of course, makes Miz very upset as he breaks through the security officers, breaking through Shelton Benjamin, Primo, and somehow overcame Sanity ringside. But Shane was long gone. Even though he was watching from the entranceway, he was long gone by the time Miz broke away. And just this is more of an interesting and emotional and passionate angle match, if you will, storyline, more so than whatever came out of Becky and Ronda and Charlotte ever. And that was months in the making. This just had a couple of weeks? I mean, when the creative hit and miss, wow, they really hit and miss. And those misses, you better duck. Make sure that baseball bat don't hit you across the head. So we get into the Gauntlet tag team match as the New Day come out, and the first team to take on is Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows. Interesting here that they were even used at all. And they are dismissed very quickly. Up next was Shinsuke Nakamura and Rusev. At least they put up more of an effort here, but the New Day was able to be victorious. Then came the Bar, Sheamus and Cesaro. As we see backstage, a crowd supporting Kofi Kingston looks on. After the Bar was eliminated, they continued to attack the New Day from bringing in a table, as Big E was the one sacrificed and was sent through it. As the Bar leave, Big E and Xavier Woods laid out in the ring. This brings out the Smackdown Tag Team Champions of the Usos. And at first, it looked like they were chomping at the bit. They were about to get their spots in and do a beatdown on the New Day. But instead, they both grabbed microphones, still holding their championship belts, on the other hand. And in so many words, they cut a quick promo saying, well, you know what? You guys have earned our respect. Kofi has earned our respect. They've earned the respect of the fans, of the locker room, of the roster. So with that said, we forfeit. The SmackDown Tag Team Champions forfeit a gauntlet match to the New Day in order for them to get one step closer to victory, in order for Kofi Kingston to have his title match at WrestleMania. So while this was happening, Daniel Bryan and Rowan were watching backstage, and they were livid. I mean, livid, throwing furniture, even the poor TV around in their locker room, as they were the final team to come out to take on the New Day. And they were all but getting close to getting disqualified, Bryan and Rowan, as they were going to set up Big E on the announce table, as Daniel Bryan was telling Rowan to basically do his claw slam or his jaw claw hold slam on Big E through the table, as Xavier Woods was on the other end, all beaten down. But Xavier comes to, he gets rid of Daniel Bryan. So now it's a 2-on-1, Big E and Xavier taking on Rowan, as he gets tossed over the announce table. And Big E tried to tip over, or was tipping over the announce table, and he made it look like this thing weighed a ton, considering how easy it is to break and how many times we've seen people less stronger and less of a physique that Big E has easily tip over this table. But Big E took forever. I got it. It was to add more suspense to it, and eventually tipped over the table, crushing and trapping Rowan in the process, as he was the legal man at that time. And here's one little nitpick. The referee was already counting. He must have been up to maybe 5 or 6, maybe 7, as both men were counted out. Big E and Xavier got back into the ring. Now, the ref should have continued the 10 count, but for some reason restarted. And the referee, with the fans and with Big E and Xavier, counted along up to 10. The referee rings the bell, and the New Day win the gauntlet match. And the emotion, the excitement, I mean, it was just overwhelming. It was great to see finally Kofi Kingston get his updoing. And it's official, as it was made official verbally by Vince himself as he was leaving the arena. Who was it? Charlie Caruso that caught up with him and wanted to get a word from Vince about what just took place. And yeah, Kofi Kingston has earned his opportunity at WrestleMania at Daniel Bryan's WWE Championship. Of course, this could all change. There's still a week left to still have the go-home shows, but I'm pretty sure it'll be more to, screw with him. I mean, he's clearly earned every opportunity only for it to be taken away. This one wasn't, for some strange reasons, and we shall see. More than likely be speculation, a stipulation added to the match. 2 out of 3 falls, who knows? Or maybe it'll be a steel cage match. We haven't seen one of those lately at a WrestleMania. Something. I know something will be up. Maybe the inclusion of Harper, who has been medically cleared to return and be a part, actually, of WrestleMania Fan Axxess this weekend, which I'll get into much later. But Harper is cleared to return. He might make his presence known at WrestleMania itself. So that was Raw and SmackDown this week. with a bit of an updated WrestleMania card. I'll have a full rundown of the WrestleMania card next time on the JM Report. But let's get into other news that made the airways this week. All In 2 is happening. We just don't know when. We do know where. We'll be back in Chicago at the Sears Center, as per Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, who were part of the C2E2 Expo this past weekend. And they confirmed this. Speaking of the Young Bucks, they will definitely defend their AAA World Tag Team Championships against the Lucha Bros at AEW's Double or Nothing event on May 25th. It was confirmed this week the match will be for the AAA Tag Team Championships. Later on, a partnership was announced between AEW and AAA that we will see the brands working together moving forward, and also would make up for interesting interpromotional matches, as we're still getting the roster filled up for AEW, and we all know a lot of members from the AAA company has been working with members of AEW before. Of course, All In could be the unofficial first event for AEW. They just weren't called AEW yet. But yeah, a lot of interpromotional events can come out of this, as they do have relationships with Impact and well, the soon-to-be defunct Lucha Underground. Real quick, they've granted releases for their talents whose contracts are coming up or have already expired. But unfortunately, there are still pending lawsuits, because they being Lucha Underground, wouldn't let certain talent out of their contracts, even long gone expired. So I guess we can officially say, scratch off Lucha Underground's work in partnership with AEW. Speaking of which, Cody Rhodes made it clear that AEW will not be running any shows during this or any WrestleMania weekend, as he made the announcement on Twitter, answering a fan's question that that belongs to WWE, meaning the weekend of, where there are other independent and other smaller promotions running shows the weekend of WrestleMania. This could change. Cody could change his mind later, or maybe one of the executive producers, executive vice presidents could chime in and say, hey, let's try this once to see how it goes. I mean, for what it's worth and what Cody was saying here, I guess out of respect, I'll say, hey, I wouldn't compete against him like that. I'm just doing my own thing, which I completely understand. But still makes you wonder, what if you did? What if you did? Still business. I mean, this WrestleMania weekend alone, which is next week, by the way, it's jam-packed, and there are, I don't know how many. Those are graphs somebody put up on Facebook of all the local independent shows that are taking place as of that week's Thursday leading into Sunday, of all these wrestling shows taking place, including the Hall of Fame, including the G1 Supercard, including WrestleMania itself. Just a lot of stuff going on. Of course, NXT New York. It is a lot. It is a lot of shows happening. You cannot attend all of them because some of these shows will be happening at the same time. So I guess you will probably have to read about it. Or if they do some kind of streaming network thing, then you can attend one show while watching another one on a tablet, I guess. Who knows? Wrestling Inc. was interviewing Buff Bagwell, and the best way to describe this interview, when it came to a certain portion, that Bagwell doesn't have too much faith in AEW. He says, at my age, WWE is the only option, because these other boys are for the young kids, and unfortunately, they don't get it. Nobody knows them. I'm in the industry, and I don't know the Young Bucks and Cody. So if I don't know them, y'all don't know them. So I don't get it. I mean, it's kind of difficult not to run into someone that doesn't know who the Young Bucks are or who Cody Rhodes is. I mean, I'll admit I didn't know who the Young Bucks was until maybe nearly a year after starting their run with New Japan, and became the Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions and the New Japan Tag Team Champions at the same time. Even before then, slightly before then, and then I got into who are the exact members of the Bullet Club. To be honest, I didn't follow them because I couldn't. I didn't have the capability that I have now to catch up with New Japan. I don't have their streaming network. I didn't sign up for it. Once in a while, well, for a time anyway, I did have the Axxess channel, but not too long ago, I changed cable providers, and now that's not part of my tier, unfortunately. And it was funny when I did have Axxess, I didn't have the El Rey network, so I couldn't watch Lucha Underground at the time. Now it's reversed. I do have the El Rey network, but I lose out because Lucha Underground is not coming back anytime soon, and I don't have the Axxess TV. So I couldn't really follow, and by that I'm saying that they were televising episodes that could not have been no more than a week or two old, and that allowed people here in the States who weren't members of the streaming service to catch up with what's happening with New Japan. And if that wasn't the case, of course, there were highlights on YouTube, people stream it elsewhere, and it was just really difficult to catch up. And now that I'm somewhat caught up with, at least from what I'm reading, as far as the Young Bucks go and how they were able to get a chance to get into AAA and now have a working relationship with them and AEW, I'm not sure exactly where Buff Bagwell is coming from. I mean, it's not that he is as limited as I was. If anything, he just said he's in the business. He's in the inside, so to speak. He's in the industry. So having conversations alone with just about anyone at these Q&As, at these conventions, by this I'm getting that neither Cody nor the Young Bucks ever approached Bagwell to introduce themselves. But to say that they don't get it, I mean, Cody Rhodes, of all people, not get it. His father was Dusty Rhodes, for crying out loud. His brother, who's been in the business for decades, and that's putting it nicely, but a really long time. And along the way, Cody Rhodes even mentioned that he will pick here and there bits of info to understand the business even more. And he's worked for WWE, obviously. And during his younger ages, his teenage, his early 20s, he was in WCW. I'm not sure if he officially worked for them, but when his father was booking, Cody was around. He talked to all the talent. See, that's something that not everyone brings up a lot, unless it just happens to be part of a conversation in an interview during the time period that they're discussing. Like, yeah, I was in WCW with my father. But it's a bit of a stretch for Bagwell to say something like that. But it's his opinion. Maybe he'll come around and change his mind and say, okay, I doubted them, but now they're successful. They're more than just a t-shirt company. They just haven't had the opportunity to do so yet because, you can't speed up the clock. May 25th is just around the corner. The 2019 New Japan Cup is now in the books as Okada defeated Sanada in the finals. And with that victory, Okada will face the IWGP Heavyweight Champion Switchblade Jay White at the G1 Supercard, in what will be White's first defense since winning the title back in February 11th, as the G1 Supercard will take place on April 6th at Madison Square Garden in New York City. And of course, that week of the Good Old JM report, I'll have a rundown and have results on the following week. Unfortunately, this was a bad week for Flip Gordon. I mentioned last week on the show, he was medically cleared to return to the ring and a chance to be on the G1 Supercard show. Unfortunately, he was re-injured after competing in the match for Over the Top Wrestling. Gordon re-injured his knee after he said that it felt like it locked up. According to Gordon's physician, it looks like the athlete suffered another tear. It is yet to be confirmed whether or not he will need surgery to repair the tear, but for now, it will keep him out of action for at least 6 months. Ring of Honor made an official announcement on their website that Gordon is out of his scheduled match at Road to G1 Supercard, although he will still appear at the Festival of Honor event to sign autographs. So that really sucks. You go 1 week from being cleared, return to the ring to do what you love best, only to be re-injured a week later and miss out on what will more than likely be one of the best shows of the year, wrestling-wise, coming from MSG. And I hope he'll at least make his presence known if the injury is not that severe. Again, it's not known whether or not it requires surgery, but maybe make a little announcement or do something like they did in All In and have guest commentators for a match. Wouldn't be too far-fetched, but, get well soon, Flip Gordon. Pac, or the former Neville in WWE, has had issues with his visa and will not be attending WrestleCon next week at New York City. The reason is due to his inability to obtain a travel visa to fly out of England. However, despite this, Pac is still expected to make his AEW appearances moving forward. The report I looked up, attorneys were trying to get this fixed ahead of time. And, attorneys for WrestleCon, that is, so trying to get everyone cleared that's flying in from out of the country. And Pac was the only one who had issues. And they just couldn't come up with some solution. And he's going to miss out, unfortunately, on this year's WrestleCon. PW Insider is confirming that Eli Drake's contract with Impact Wrestling is set to expire at the end of May. No word yet on Drake's plans are, but according to Mike Johnson of Insider, there is certainly an interest for him outside of Impact. This was all later confirmed by Drake himself as he spoke with Wrestling Perspective. Even of the idea of jumping to WWE, he said, "I wondered that too because I saw that the other day. I got tagged with that on Instagram. I looked at that. I think it says something to the effect of WWE interested in Eli Drake. And I'm like, well, nobody has contacted me, so what's the source?" He goes on to say, "I've talked with people there that I'm friendly with, coaches that I'm friendly with, stuff like that. People have said, I think you would do well here, but nothing as far as making me an offer. There was nothing like that. It was more just like a friendly conversation along with, by the way, you could probably think about it. There was nothing outright. Nobody's contacted me. I know AEW is out there. The fact there's a lot of options out there at this point. This is the time where, truth be told, I run up on May 31st here with Impact. So if that's the case, then it's time to start thinking about what options I have. Things like that. Look at me being open. There are a couple of months left on this. Should I stay or should I go? We will find out. But the deal is, there are so many options out there now, and it's just a matter of how can I best boost my brand awareness, and how can I also put more money in my pocket. I'm also looking at longevity. I'm 36. I feel like I'm 19, but sometimes my body doesn't agree with me. It's just a matter of figuring out what's going to work best for me long term. And you know what? Time will tell. A similar situation was with AJ Styles before he debuted at the Royal Rumble in 2016. And at the time, he was pushing 40, Styles was. Drake is coming up in a couple of years. Yeah, he's going to say the exact same thing. And God willing, physically, he can still be able to go. By then, we won't know where he'll be exactly. WWE, NXT, AEW, either way. I enjoy Eli Drake's work, and I really hope he does find a place to land his feet in and hang up his boots somewhere. what started off as a report initially saying Goldust is no longer contracted by WWE, but this was according to Pro Wrestling Sheet. The longtime veteran is currently serving a 90-day no-compete clause, and he will be a free agent with no strings attached after that. However, according to the man himself, Goldust is still with the WWE, saying, "I am still under contract with the WWE. Everything that is being said online is just talk and complete bullshit." Of course, after the original report, there was a video teaser that Cody Rhodes' opponent for Double or Nothing could be his own brother, Dustin Rhodes. And everyone started speculating that, well, he'll become totally free in May, long before Double or Nothing comes along, and won't be binded by the 90-day no-compete clause. But here he is saying that that's not true. But the video is still up, the teasing video. So unless they make some changes or acknowledge that this is not the case, that being AEW who put up the video, or just flat out say like, well, it was worth a shot. But this is just another one of those time will tell. Goldust has been working backstage. He's all but retired as Goldust's character. He just hasn't come out and flat out and said it. I believe he's working with the shows department down in Texas. I believe he's been deputized, at least. My understanding, if I remember what I read on that story. But yeah, when he's not backstage with WWE as an agent or a coach or any kind of capacity, yeah, he's with the police. NXT has yet lost another potential star in Ricardo Miller, as Miller requested his release from the company. He came alongside with Sam Shaw and Rachel Evers back in January. Prior to jumping, he played for Michigan as a tight end. At this time, it's unknown as to why he requested for his release. This comes after Stacey Irving Jr. also left the company after suffering concussion. And the WWE has said that they have given Irving Jr. the time to think about the decision. But recent tweets seem to point towards him heading to a different direction in the near future. So curious to see or find out exactly what's leading to at least Ricardo Miller's decision to leave. As far as Irving Jr.'s, I mean, it's one thing to be released due to injury. It's another thing to be injured and then ask for your release. But at least Irving Jr.'s case was given the opportunity to think about it. There's still time to return to fulfill your dreams, I guess, in NXT. Drake Maverick, general manager of 205 Live, made it official that Orny Lorcan is now the newest member of the 205 roster, as Lorcan has been a consistent tag team partner with Danny Burch in NXT and has previously feuded with Drew Gulak when both competitors were in Evolve. So I think some people should focus a little bit more on 205 Live. There are the future stars, a huge package of stars there just waiting to be noticed, at least on the Raw and SmackDown brands. How the idea of the cruiserweights debacled as part of the Raw team, the Raw roster team. There was potential there. It was just how it was presented. And, constant tag team matches over and over again. You don't really get to know people like that. Just shoehorn them all in one match, I think was a big mistake. Once you announced them and they brought them all out one time, it was a very small roster, maybe no more than a dozen. And at the time, I believe it was, it might have been, Neville. Neville was still champion at the time. He was a cruiserweight champion. And just throw them out there all at the same time. And Austin Aries was still around. I think just like you do in an entertainment environment, when you got characters, you want to introduce them one at a time, or in this case, two at a time, because you want to put them in one-on-one matches. There wasn't very much backstory to who these guys were. Yeah, you got the commentators. Oh, so-and-so went to this school. So-and-so played for that team. Okay. But to do it, and that's all you freaking hear. You know, what about the accomplishments in the ring? Where have they been? Which is very small portions of compared to their other backgrounds of education and what other sports they might have had interest in. But it's still taboo that you can't really acknowledge other wrestling companies out there. Well, he used to wrestle for New Japan, and he used to wrestle for Impact Wrestling, and blah, blah, blah. I feel that's where they dropped the ball when it came to introducing the cruiserweights to Raw, to the Raw audience at least, and essentially led to having their own brand, their own show, only on a network, which not everyone follows, unfortunately. Not to mention there's really no build-up. They've rarely acknowledged, let alone promote an upcoming match on 205 Live, which takes, a minute? Not even. Be sure to catch 205 Live this Tuesday night after Smackdown. The Cruiserweight title will be defended by Buddy Murphy against Gran Metalik. You know, at least keep that title relevant. I mean, that takes, again, a minute to promote, put up the graph, tell them how and where to watch. You guys are good at that. Among other things, they cram down our throats, but in lighter, better news, congratulations are in order to JoJo and Bray Wyatt as they're expecting their first child sometime in June. And we now know that both have been off television. Now we know why they've both been off television. JoJo wanted to keep this private as she and Bray Wyatt quietly walked away from WWE. But pictures surfaced this week on JoJo's social medias, I believe, specifically on Instagram, showing off her belly. And one particular pic, you see JoJo holding her stomach and Bray Wyatt's hands over JoJo's hands, and the tattoos kind of gave it away. And this photo shoot was particularly taken on the beach. They were well done. They were very well lit. It was clear to sunset, I want to say. JoJo looked amazing. And they have already named their child Knash with a K. Like knife with a K, but, Knash. JoJo will go on to say, I am so excited to announce that baby Knash is coming this June. This has been the most beautiful, incredible experience of my life so far. I am so happy that I was able to use this time to enjoy this privately. But now I'm ready to share with you all. I could not be happier. This truly has been the biggest blessing, and words cannot explain how ready and excited we are to meet meet my little man. I love you more than you'll ever know. Oh, and WWE Universe, we will be back when the time is right. So there you go. The rumors and speculations, which I chose not to address here, other than asking where are they. Bray Wyatt, other than making an occasional appearance here and there with Matt Hardy on house shows, even before Matt Hardy took time off and quietly not retire, only to make a comeback a few weeks ago. But, it makes sense now. They've been on this, I guess you could say, this fraternity leave for a few months now. And like Daniel Bryan and his wife, Brie, took the time off to enjoy the first couple of months after Birdie was born, and for them to come back. And, of course, The Miz now, same thing with his child, took time off. Maurice did. And now they're expecting a second child. So more than likely to be another time off we'll see from The Miz. So everyone thought of everything but this. That there's something wrong, that they're in the doghouse because of the circumstances leading up to JoJo and Bray Wyatt getting together in the first place, which, again, I'm not going to get into. That's just, it's not wrestling. I mean, yeah, it involves wrestling people, but we'll go certain things that go behind the scenes that or take place behind stage or whatever. Yeah, I'm staying out of that one. It's going to be nothing but he said, she said anyway, from third and fourth parties and so on. So, no, that's just something I'd rather not discuss or let alone even cover here. But there's a bundle of joy on his way. His name is Knash. And Bray Wyatt, you definitely have the whole world in your hands now. Speaking of which, Wyatt has a new look. As per Tyler Trees on Twitter, a picture was taken of Bray Wyatt's new trimmed beard. It's still pretty long, but not as, maybe halfway cut off. And a mohawk of sorts. It looks like the sides were shaved off, but Bray Wyatt still kept the long braids, the long dreads, right smack down the middle, all the way down his back. You know what? He looks more badass now. I don't know if he's going to drop the Bray Wyatt family gimmick altogether, that kind of dark character. But here it looked more like a Mad Max character. But I think it looks cool. So curious to see how his character, if ever, is going to get tweaked when he does make his return. Triple H looks to make a standalone NXT TakeOver show in San Jose, which would take place on the weekend of June 8th. And the WWE does not have a scheduled pay-per-view that weekend. So this is definitely a good move, I believe, to have NXT. They might have done this once before, just have a TakeOver show out of the blue and not have a WWE pay-per-view the next night on that weekend. So they need to do more of this. Maybe not necessarily TakeOver shows, but maybe network specials of some sort where you have NXT live shows and you want people to tune in and not also be worried about or concentrate, well, yeah, tomorrow's WrestleMania or tomorrow's SummerSlam. Let them stand on their own. Let them breathe on their own. They have before for a long time. This is just another way of securing that. And I think this is a good move on Triple H and NXT's part. Got some UFC news here. May not all be directly pro wrestling related, but you'd be surprised nowadays how many current and UFC athletes or talents would interact or mingle with wrestling superstars outside of the octagon or outside the wrestling ring. But here, Daniel Cormier, current UFC World Heavyweight Champion, spoke with Steve Lively on ESPN. In the interview, Cormier said that he did not have anything quite scheduled yet, but was very interested in Brock Lesnar and would go to WrestleMania to cost him the Universal title if it meant getting him in the octagon sooner. Cormier, of course, is the current UFC champion, has been clear about his desire to square off against Lesnar. And it will be interesting to see if Lesnar drops the belt at Mania or if Vince throws a little bit more money his way in order to prolong his return to the UFC. The man has 2 contracts. Not sure exactly what the income or how the income works from the UFC side of things, but to a point, Dana White has to step in. It's like, okay, listen, I want this guy to fight. He wants to fight. When is he open? And you know what? When he's done with this one fight, you can have him back as is. And about Daniel Cormier heading to WrestleMania, he's teased that before, something along the lines that he'll show up on Raw or whichever pay-per-view was coming up because Lesnar was going to be there and that Cormier will make his presence known. He's yet to do that. Not the first time he said that on ESPN or anywhere else, but he's yet to do it. There hasn't been any reports of Daniel Cormier having a working relationship with the WWE or Vince McMahon or anyone for that matter. But it would be interesting, but I just don't see it happening. It would have happened already, though it would make an interesting angle, if you will. But think about it. You want an outside influence or an outside source in Daniel Cormier. If anything, you're helping promote UFC's upcoming event where, as Cormier mentioned, to cost Lesnar the Universal title in order for him to come back, then all focus on UFC. Fans will shy away from WWE like, well, Lesnar's leaving WWE to go to UFC, so let's follow Lesnar's trail and see how he's going to react to Lesnar or react to Cormier costing Lesnar his title at WrestleMania. It's not exactly how the business works like that. You can acknowledge each other. You might help promote the other guy's pay-per-view, but as far as go see what happens with Lesnar at UFC because you won't be on WWE anymore. It's not the way to do it. Chris Cyborg took aim at Ronda Rousey after the main event was made official for WrestleMania. As I don't know if she personally did it herself, but there was a image that was photoshopped of Chris Cyborg sitting on a chair and having a child-sized Ronda Rousey laid across her lap, and Cyborg was basically spanking her, spanking her bum, saying that make wrestling real again. Of course, Cyborg is known for her jiu-jitsu and also her amateur wrestling skills. She is very, how can I say? Well, she is dangerous in fights. I'm not saying that she's dangerous as a person, although she can defend herself. But she's very well known for her grappling skills, for her wrestling techniques in her MMA fights. And it's been long speculated that we will get a Ronda Rousey Chris Cyborg match. Didn't happen in UFC, not after Ronda's second loss. And finally, after Cyborg got into UFC, and there was that possibility, but never happened. Again, similar to like the Daniel Cormier situation, Cyborg has not been contacted or affiliated with WWE in any kind of way. But it would make sense for an outside talent like this to talk trash just to spice things up, if that's the plan moving forward. But if you remember, say, in the beginning of the year, or maybe a little further back than that, Ronda talking about taking time off after WrestleMania, besides having other commitments, maybe want to start a family kind of thing. You could, look at everybody else. JoJo and Bray Wyatt took time off to have a baby. While still competing, Miz and Maurice still had time to make a baby. But they'll still take that time off to raise the child, to have mom and dad present. And eventually mom and or dad have to go back to work. So I would expect something similar if that's what is led to believe from what Ronda shared. I believe it was a TMZ interview. And why not? And maybe spice things up for a Cyborg grudge match. But in a essentially would not make sense because that feud started somewhere else. Sure, you had the Ken Shamrock, Dan Severn feud happen, and they could have had their rubber match in WWF at the time, but they both had victories legit in MMA over each other. What's the point of having a worked match result? What sense would that make? That definitely would have pissed off the MMA community. And if that was the frame of mind that back then, you know what? Kudos. I'll give you credit for that. But I doubt it will work for Cyborg and Ronda because Cyborg needs to be built up in the WWE's eyes, in the fans of the WWE, that is. We might know who she is. We know where she came from, but we don't know her as basically as a pro wrestling character. So it was how many weeks, maybe a couple of months before Ronda actually got physical before her debut at last year's Mania. So something along those lines. Unfortunately, Chris Cyborg herself has a little bit of difficulty speaking English. She does have this deep Brazilian accent, and it can be difficult to understand her. So maybe pair her off with Paul Heyman when Lesnar's not around. Heyman's not. I don't think Heyman has a full-time contract, but he comes and goes and is paid per appearance, just like Lesnar. Have him as the mouthpiece for Cyborg. Just imagine, Heyman could be basically the advocate but for the men's and women's roster. And if this is just fantasy booking, if things were different now, and if Lesnar wasn't going to go eventually back to UFC, and Cyborg was a free agent for a little while, just the visual Brock Lesnar making sense, but eventually would have to drop the title. To have Brock Lesnar, former UFC champion and current WWE championship over his shoulder, and on the other side of the picture you have Chris Cyborg, say as the Raw Women's Champion with the title over her shoulder, and she's also, I believe she's the current bantamweight Women's Champion in the UFC. So you have two outside MMA fighters, even though Lesnar's been there before, but they're there to dominate. And that's exactly what Ronda's doing, because she's the baddest woman on the planet. And no one's been booked yet strongly enough to take out Ronda Rousey in the WWE. The closest one was Asuka, purely on popularity. And then Becky Lynch came along. She's the man. She became the new Stone Cold in a sense. Asuka wasn't given that opportunity because, again, she was never on freaking TV. But I digress. Moving on. Cain Velasquez has signed with AAA. I mentioned this last week that he has interest in pro wrestling. And even though he has been spotted training at the Performance Center with WWE in Orlando, but he signed with AAA. And Velasquez was introduced as the Mexican Wrestling Promotion's latest signee in Triple Mania press conference in Mexico City earlier this week. Velasquez will be appearing at Triple Mania. I believe they're up to Triple Mania 27. Will take place on August 3rd in Mexico City. After being revealed as AAA's latest competitor, Velasquez was called out and challenged by quite a few familiar faces, including Psycho Clown, Pentagon Jr., and Texano. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. So, again, a lot of UFC influences in pro wrestling today. It has been for a long time. You can go back during the Attitude Era, even some in WCW. Okay, well, this does include a UFC fighter. There's a lot of bad, some okay, and other, not too interesting stories regarding Conor McGregor. He announced his retirement again via Twitter earlier in the week. And despite having Finn Balor tease a Conor appearance at WrestleMania again, hours after announcing his retirement from MMA, Conor McGregor is now dealing with an alleged sexual assault. The New York Times reported that McGregor is being investigated in Ireland after a woman accused him of sexual assault back in December of 2018. Conor is yet to be charged with any crime, but the report reads, following the usual protocol in criminal investigations in Ireland and much of Europe, where a formal charge does not necessarily follow an arrest, McGregor was arrested in January, questioned by law enforcement authorities, and released pending further investigation. Conor's lawyer did not respond to the New York Times report. However, the woman accusing McGregor claims that the incident occurred in the Beacon Hotel in Dublin, and McGregor is reportedly a frequent guest there at the establishment, oftentimes booking its sole penthouse room. His last and most recent visit occurred back in December, which is around the time the alleged attack took place. A spokesperson confirmed McGregor was arrested back on January 17th and released without charge while the investigation continues. The New York Post reported the notes that anonymous people with knowledge of the hotel's operations confirmed that McGregor visited the night before police say the alleged attack took place. Police have also obtained evidence of McGregor's hotel room as well as closed-circuit camera footage. So this man goes from dolly tossing, which was caught on camera, to camera smashing, to now an alleged sexual assault. What is the dealio? But this is very serious. It's no laughing matter. It's no joke to be accused of something like this, let alone found guilty of, because you don't know what kind of mental, psychological, and emotional scarring this will leave the victim. For his sake, I hope this is all a misunderstanding and that things can be resolved. You know, I'm not saying this is something that should be swept under the rug. No, every time something like this is brought up, and look at Enzo Amore. I mean, the stuff he went through after all of this turned out to be nonsense anyway. I'm not saying this is one or the other, but it's really difficult once you're accused, once you're acknowledged that, hey, you did this to me, you should be arrested. Then you got to fight for your freedom, your livelihood, to prove otherwise that you're innocent. I would assume until this is all over with that some of his sponsors are going to be stepping aside until things get cleared up. And until found not guilty, you can resume business as scheduled, and we move on to see what Conor McGregor's next move is going to be. Good luck with that. As first reported on WrestleVote's Twitter account, and now confirmed locally in New York by WHTZ Z100, 100.3 FM to be exact, an advertisement for the Hall of Fame ceremony ran through the local radio station, listing Brutus the Barber Beefcake as the final name going into this year's Hall of Fame, which already confirmed the Hart Foundation, Tori Wilson, the Honky Tonk Man, D-Generation X. And for those who don't follow me on my Facebook, I did run into Beefcake a couple of weeks ago at the Tampa International Airport as we were both heading to New York. I also ran into Tugboat and Tatanka, but Beefcake was the one that I had a brief conversation with. And I asked, hey, there's rumors of you going to the Hall of Fame this year, but I try to say it as if like the rumors were stronger more than ever. They were more loud than previous years. And Beefcake's response was, well, that's been said for many years, meaning that every year there's been a rumor about Beefcake going to the Hall of Fame, which I seriously doubt. But this one in particular was more apparent even before this announcement by Z100 that Beefcake was invited by the WWE for WrestleMania Axxess, along with Hulk Hogan, to make public appearances, to make Q&As, and of course, meet and greets. So signs were there. I guess those in New York who attended the first time a couple of weeks ago where I was on the same flight with Beefcake, and I'm pretty sure the majority of fans who attended that show, that meet and greet, were unaware that Beefcake was even being considered to be in the Hall of Fame. So they got lucky. Hey, I took a picture with this guy just before he got inducted into the Hall of Fame. I was fortunate enough to have that done so myself, but Ivory comes to mind. She was the most recent one that was inducted that I ran into and had a pleasure of meeting. But you know what? Well-deserved, man. He and Hogan came up together. They were kayfabe brothers. They had on and off again relationships legit outside the ring. Worked together in the WWF as the Mega Maniacs for a while before one of their last runs. Both worked in WCW with each other, against each other. Eventually, Beefcake became the disciple and became the one and only other member of the One Warrior Nation. And just for reasons, Beefcake never really found, I guess, common ground to stand on, as everyone else was either promoted ahead of him or advertised better. But you know what? At the end of the day, he was getting TV time. It didn't last too long, but you know, he was part of the NWO, which was a big deal for a while. He was trying to, not he, but he was trying to be used as the middle guy between the NWO and the OWN when the Warrior was there for a few months. He had so many different characters: the Zodiac Man, the Booty Man, as I mentioned, the Disciple, who used the Apocalypse as a finisher move, which was basically the Stone Cold Stunner. And who knows? I mean, Hogan was his friend, right? And I'm not trying to cast any kind of ill will here, but if that was the belief, I mean, or maybe Beefcake never wanted that kind of accolade. Like, hey, I'm just happy that I'm here. I'm happy I'm getting paid at all to be on TV or not. I'm still getting paid. I was a big fan of Beefcake growing up. I even dressed as him as one time in Halloween. I would say that had to have been 88, 89, at the height of his popularity at the time in the World Wrestling Federation. And we have to come full circle. I'm pretty sure it'll be announced this week on Raw. It has to be. I mean, there's no more time left. And congratulations are in order. I would assume Hogan himself will be the one inducting Brutus Beefcake into the Hall of Fame. And you know what? Welcome home, Barber. Speaking of retirement, Brie Bella officially announced her retirement on a recent episode of Total Bellas. Also, Nikki Bella soon followed suit, announcing her retirement on the same episode this past weekend on Total Bellas. Nikki announced that she too is done with wrestling in the square circle during a 35th birthday dinner party she shared with her twin sister, citing how the traveling aspect was a rough matter to get reaccustomed as well, saying that the tour was good, but I just feel like I'm too old for the travel, which is kind of redundant. The travel was really rough on her and just decided to call it quit. However, later on in the week, TMZ reported that Bella, Nikki that is not leaving the WWE on bad terms and will still serve as an ambassador for the company. She also said definitely open for a return to the ring. Sources tell TMZ that Bella still loves wrestling and the WWE, is open to making cameos on TV if the timing is right, as Bella is currently managing several businesses of her own outside of wrestling, including a podcast that was recently debuted with her sister Brie, an active wear line, I should say, beauty products, and a wine label. So she's keeping herself busy, was able to establish businesses outside of wrestling and try to stay relevant, and made a name for herself. She and her sister originally left WWE a few years ago. I believe they were trying their acting chops a little bit, didn't work out. And really the only other place to go was to return to WWE. And that's when Brie met her future husband, Daniel Bryan. Nikki would eventually start dating John Cena, but unfortunately that didn't go anywhere long term. But both seem to be happy now, and especially the Bellas now that they're retired, and that's one less stressful thing to worry about. And in Brie's case, she can stay home and be a mom. And whenever Daniel comes around, it's nothing but happy times, and just spend time together as a family. Mustafa Ali had his first name dropped, as once again, Ali has become the newest victim of having their name cut in half, simply going now as Ali. This shortened became official on the WWE website this week. Additionally, his Twitter handler has been changed from Mustafa Ali WWE to @Ali WWE. So even his Twitter handler account was cut in half as well. But he made a comment about this and was very gung-ho about it, saying, Mustafa means the chosen one, with an emphasis on being chosen from amongst the people. Name or not, nothing has changed. I fight for the people. I am one of them. So it's good to see that he's taken this with a good heart, meaning that he's not too upset about it. And just again, one of the recent victims of having a name cut in half. And I don't think he was introduced as simply Ali at Fastlane. And he hasn't made appearances in the past couple of weeks on Smackdown because they've been occupied with gauntlet matches, taking up an entire hour, or at least this case, nearly an hour. But hopefully when things settle down, maybe this week we'll see him. But definitely after the draft, after WrestleMania on Raw and SmackDown in 2 weeks, we'll have the shake-up, if you will, to see who's going where and what will we be calling them. Here's a name familiar from the past. Alberto El Patron used to be known as Alberto Del Rio in WWE, saying that he has made peace with the WWE and even reached out to Triple H and has apologized for his comments made in the past, and is hoping to have a working relationship with the WWE once again. According to FIFO, not only did Del Rio have a rocky relationship with the WWE on his way out, but the impressions he's made with the other superstars, management, and staff behind the scenes also seem to make any sort of return highly unlikely. Even though El Patron is open, but Triple H and WWE may not be. So the concept of forgive and forget can only exist whenever they want to, I guess. Bill DeMott is aiming to help change a law here in Florida and has been doing so for the past 2 years after his daughter was unfortunately killed by a drunken driver. Earlier this week, DeMont visited Brooks High School and told the story of his daughter, Carrie Ann DeMont, and she was on her way home in the early morning hours of October 10th, 2015, when she was struck head-on by a drunken driver in a collision. Since then, DeMont and his wife have been attempting to work with Florida officials and state senators and representatives to change a state law that allows the person charged with DUI to plead down if their blood alcohol content is over 0.08. According to Bill DeMont, this year is the closest that the foundation has been to seeing the law changed. And he would also like to see the initiative go national to help others around the world, saying, this should be a state law. Kerry's law is about accountability. If you get pulled over for drunk driving and you're drunk, and if you're over the 0.08 limit, you should not have the option of pleading down, knowing that you made the choice. If you're double the limit, you don't ever get to plead out. So, yeah, it's definitely time for those who make the choice, who take that responsibility out of their own hands to drink a few drinky poos, and then you decide to drive. And you can't really approach, after that, you can't really approach the situation. Well, whatever happens, happens. You know, I've seen that happen way too many times. You hear about it on the news, and it's not always a head-on collision with another car. Sometimes you hear about driving down the wrong way of a one-way street, hitting a pedestrian, walking on the sidewalk, and all points in between. People have their licenses revoked, suspended, points taken off, but really not paying the consequences, especially if a life is taken. So I'm glad to see that Bill DeMont is pushing to have the law slightly changed. He's not changing it. He's not adding a new one. It's just like, well, let's, reevaluate the law and make these changes to it. And you know what? I would love to see this happen. According to Pro Wrestling Sheet, Becky Lynch has been recently offered a new multi-year contract with the WWE. It is said that the new contract includes a pay raise, but Becky is still yet to sign on the dotted line. So kind of hanging this over their heads. I guess we'll find out after WrestleMania, right? I'm like, well, you want to make her and others happy. Charlotte's contract doesn't come up anytime soon, and Ronda is expected to take time off. So yeah, all eyes on Becky. So maybe there's an influence there to make her the champion after WrestleMania or at WrestleMania. And yeah, sure enough, I'll sign now and get that raise out of it. I know I'm going along here, but just a couple of more stories. What a difference a year makes. At first, Vince did not want to see a Raw vs. SmackDown Survivor Series pay-per-view last year, but because the changes made ahead of time when Roman Reigns had surrendered the title, his Universal title, announcing his illness, Becky Lynch getting punched in the face by Nia Jax, AJ Styles losing the title to Daniel Bryan in order for him to take on Brock Lesnar. This year, after the upcoming draft, of course, post-WrestleMania, the WWE sent out emails promoting the pre-sale and advertised the following Team Monday Night Raw versus Team SmackDown live match. Now, these are potential spoilers. They could change because there's a long time between now and November 24th at the Allstate Arena. So as of now, Team Raw is represented by Roman Reigns, Braun Strowman, Drew McIntyre, Finn Balor, and Bobby Lashley. Taking on Team SmackDown as Kevin Owens, AJ Styles, Randy Orton, Samoa Joe, and Rey Mysterio. Now you notice each name I mentioned on the respective brands, they're still on their respective brands. So this could change. And it's interesting to see this far ahead in the future, at least this year, the differences that have to be put aside in order to work together. You see Roman Reigns and McIntyre teaming up, along with Balor and Lashley teaming up. And on the other side, they got Styles and Orton teaming up with Samoa Joe and Rey teaming up. And those are WrestleMania opponents. So again, if this is the case, Raw vs. SmackDown again, which might as well keep that concept for bragging rights and whatnot. I see definitely more than one change happening here. So it just can't stick that way. It just can't. It makes absolutely no sense to make this announcement, and next thing you know, none of these guys mentioned are drafted anywhere. Just saying. It was announced this week on WWE.com the return of Worlds Collide during WrestleMania Axxess at Brooklyn Pier 12. I stand corrected. It's Brooklyn Pier 12, as 205 Live, NXT, and NXT UK talent will now mingle with Raw and SmackDown talent, as each day will see different tiers, if you will, or different events take place. For example, on Thursday, April 4th, Roderick Strong takes on Tyler Breeze. Dominic will take on the returning Harper. Sanity will go 3-on-3 against Undisputed Era, and Cassius Ohno takes on Aiden English in a NXT versus NXT alumni event. On Friday, April 5th, it will be Cruiserweights Collide Sessions 1 and 2, as Tyler Bates will take on the Brian Kendrick. Akira Tozawa will take on Jordan Devlin. Flash Morgan Webster and Mark Andrews will take on Daivari and Mike Kanellis. And Albert Hardy Jr. would take on Grand Metalik. Sessions 1 runs from 1 to 5 p.m., while Sessions 2 runs from 6 to 10 p.m. NXT UK tapings will also take place on Saturday, April 6th. Sessions 1, 2, and 3. There hasn't been any matches announced yet, unfortunately, but those in attendance will be very fortunate that you will see yourselves not only at Axxess but on TV later on that month. In what is called Brands Battle on Sunday, the same day of WrestleMania, April 7th, from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., there will be 20 Superstar Battle Royals, one for the males and one for the females, and will take place the morning of WrestleMania. Both Battle Royals will feature superstars from NXT and NXT UK. And the men's Battle Royal will additionally feature superstars from 205 Live. And here's truly where worlds collide. Monday afternoon from 12 to 4 p.m., Io Shirai will take on Sonya Deville. Toni Storm, Nikki Cross, and Bianca Belair square off in a triple threat match. Piper Niven goes one-on-one with Zelina Vega. Candice LeRae goes one-on-one with Kay Lee Ray, and much more yet to be announced. But this is probably a way to make up, if you will, for lack of a better term, for those who can't make it to the main card of WrestleMania that they can still be a part of the weekend. In this case, Axxess, which they've done it with the Rumble. I believe they've done it with the Survivor Series. Definitely SummerSlam of last year. But to have these events take place at these Axxess cards, some of which are taped for the network, either for NXT the week of or NXT UK, maybe 205 Live. But it definitely gives an opportunity for everyone to shine, to say that they were there at least. And I would believe WrestleMania kicks off at 5 p.m. And since the Sunday Axxess show ends around 4, it gives them enough time to drive from Brooklyn, and it doesn't take an hour. But those who are still at the Axxess, sometimes to drive over from Brooklyn to Jersey at MetLife Stadium. But I thought they would take that chance that you'd be running late in case your match comes up or anything like that. So either way, talent that are taking part of this Axxess show can say I was part of WrestleMania weekend, and that would have some highlights. If not on the network, maybe on a Blu-ray itself. Those special features will make sense. I mean, you really got to take advantage of all this. You have all this coverage. You have all these events going on. How could you not have video coverage of any of this, if not for an event itself, but for maybe some kind of network special? They did it recently when the first World Collides took place a few months ago. Matter of fact, it was during Royal Rumble. And here you are about to have another one. So have as much talent as you can involved, and everyone's happy. All right, just a couple of more stories here, and I'll wrap it up. PW Insider is reporting that WWE is finally returning to Madison Square Garden for TV tapings, as they plan to tape Raw and SmackDown at MSG the week of September 9th. And think about this: the last time the WWE had TV from MSG was back in 2009. A whole decade. Television. Hold on. That's television. The last time they were there for a pay-per-view was the Survivor Series at 2011, where CM Punk defeated Alberto Del Rio. And the last event of any kind with the WWE was the Hall of Fame ceremony back in 2013. So there are large gaps there, even between Survivor Series of 2011 and Hall of Fame of 2013. That's a huge gap there. I mean, 2 years is a long time. That's when a sequel to a movie should be coming out. That's a long time. But for TV tapings or a live television event, a decade? Wow. The official dates may not be made public until after WrestleMania 35, as speculated by PW Insider. But with that said, it gives you at least a time frame of when these TV tapings will take place. Why did they, PW Insider, why did they acknowledge it as TV tapings is interesting, but never once mentioned that it'll be live editions of Raw and or SmackDown. So they might have a tour around that time, and they got to fill in their TV spots while they're away. Not all of their tours are telecast, except maybe the UK tour in the summertime, or towards the end of summer. And that's about it, really. That's the only time, really, that they tape Raw and or SmackDown when they're in England. Finally, speaking of Madison Square Garden, AAA is currently scheduled to hold a press conference inside MSG, once again, according to PW Insider. This will take place on Thursday, April 4th, as the conference is to allow AAA's top executives to share his vision for Lucha Libre's next chapter. AAA is currently partnered with AEW, which could lead to Cody Rhodes' promotion running the legendary arena as well. Maybe. Traditionally, MSG has been the home solely to the WWE, but that would change once Ring of Honor and New Japan Pro Wrestling's G1 Supercard airs next Saturday. AAA originally had a hold on the arena to run shows in the fall last year, but those dates came and went without any shows occurring whatsoever. So to me, this sounds like MSG is opening up to other promotions out there, because there will be forget about when it was the last time WWE was there until the next time, and putting aside the concerts and other events that take place there, hockey games, basketball games. There've been large gaps in between events at the Garden, and that's not because no one wants to book it. It's just that no one's scheduled. So this leads me to believe that someone in the higher ups at Madison Square Garden said, you know what? There are other types of promotions out there in the world of pro wrestling that may be interested. So unless they reach out to us or we reach out to them and make a deal, there's nothing really going on in the world's most famous arena. I don't even live in New York anymore, and I've noticed that from here. And that's like, wow, there's really nothing going on at the Garden. In between seasons of hockey and basketball, I mean, well, what else is there? If anything, everyone else is going to the Barclays Center. But that's a whole different argument there within itself. But the Garden, when it comes to pro wrestling, yeah, of course, you got your occasional boxing events as well. Don't get me wrong. But even in boxing, other different promotions will go into the Garden. If not, they're going to the theater there that's right outside near the lobby. Used to be called the Paramount Theater, I believe. I'm not sure what it's called now. It's been a while since I've been there. I actually attended the Survivor Series 2011 at the Garden, and I passed by what used to be the Paramount Theater, and I was looking for the new name, but I couldn't make it out, as they just finished renovating, or about to finish renovating at the time. And yeah, I had great seats for that event. But if AAA wants to come into town, I say let them. If AEW wants to have a crack at it, I say let them. Of course, there have been examples of, it doesn't work for everyone. And it's not in relations with pro wrestling. If you just look when UFC, when they made their first debut and first ever appearance in Madison Square Garden, they sold out. And they went back a second time, and they sold out. Bellator, unfortunately, I can't watch Bellator anymore because the Paramount Network is not part of my cable tier. They tried, well, they did have an event at the Garden, but they didn't sell it out. There was a few photos taken and posted on social media, and I gotta say, half the arena was full, or empty, depending on how you look at it, for that Bellator event. So is that saying Bellator is not as popular as UFC, or were the tickets more expensive? I don't really know. I just didn't follow it. I'm just throwing out assumptions, speculations. But it just doesn't work for everyone. So even though I'm excited and willing to see AAA and AEW and others that is not WWE have a show at the Garden, I'll keep an open mind and say, okay, are you expecting 15,000 or more people to sell out the arena based on your following, based on how much you advertise, or how well the card is booked? That's all I'm saying. AEW, for Double or Nothing, just got a handful of matches. They're probably waiting for Ring of Honor and New Japan show to take place first and see, okay, who's available now for our show in a few weeks from that point. We shall see. It should be very exciting, very interesting to say the least. WWE at a official capacity have absolutely no say of who comes and goes in Madison Square Garden. And they kind of backed down a little bit on their argument, almost lawsuit that took place from Ring of Honor and New Japan, and say, hey, who the hell is WWE to prevent us from holding an event for us to make money in an arena that they don't even own? Sure, they ran shows for years and years, even when Vince Sr. was around. Doesn't mean that they own it. Doesn't mean that they have any say when it comes to business, any kind of say at all. I mean, they were bumped one time from the what arena was it? It was during the NBA Finals, and they were forced to relocate to the Staples Center in Los Angeles. That's a prime example right there. If the NBA Finals were to take this, when was that year? 2004, 2005. If that year was, if the NBA Finals were taking place in Madison Square Garden, and say the Knicks were in the finals, but their next game in the championship was on that Monday, Raw was already booked, assuming that the Knicks were going to make it that far. What are they to do? And I don't think the Barclays Center existed yet at that time. So what were they going to do? Nassau Coliseum, if they were available, maybe. The Meadowlands, maybe. It's really inconvenient for those fans who have now probably had to travel even further out than they originally thought of. But the point there is, like, listen, we know you were advertised, you know you pay for this and that, but we can't postpone or relocate the NBA Finals. So, of course, Vince was very pissed, understandably, and had to basically redo everything and move over to the LA's Staples Center. And it happens. It could happen. WWE may rent out the arena one day, but they don't own it. I'm pretty sure they were refunded their money. They had to. But again, at the end of the day, it's just a business. Vince, of all people, should know that. And I'm pretty sure it's not a good feeling on his part when he's being told no. You're not getting it your way. Batista can, but not you. Well, with that said, I know I've definitely gone over than I usually do, but just want to say thank you for tuning in. You can listen into the JM Report exclusively here on my YouTube channel. You can also follow me throughout social media as listed in the description. And if you liked what you heard, you can click that like button and subscribe to my channel for more upcoming content, as there are plans on the way. I know I've said this before, but it's been a while, but plans are underway for more things to come. And next week, I'll be running down the WrestleMania card out of MetLife Stadium. And I'll try this time to give some predictions, considering how things have been going. But we'll see what takes place this week on Raw and SmackDown. If the craziness goes into this week from last week, or this week I should say, then it's not over yet, and things are still subject to change. So once again, thank you for joining me, everyone. Enjoy your weekend. If you haven't already, enjoy your spring break. I believe next week is the last one, the last opportunity for everyone else to get their chance at it. So enjoy it while it lasts. Everyone else, enjoy the rest of your weekend. And until next time, it's good old JM.
Open my eyes, leave it all behind. So open your mind.